Hello everyone. In the previous video we studied what is the DNA replication, how the DNA start to make copies of the DNA to be ready for the cell division. As you know, we said the DNA, it carries all information, the instructions how to do to give instructions for growing, for development, for dividing. But actually for this DNA, as you know, for eukaryotic cells, it's inside what? It's inside the nucleus. And we studied already the structure of the DNA, and we know the structure of the DNA, it's made up of nucleotide, and now we know what are the parts of the nucleotide: sugar, phosphate group, and nitrogen bases. Okay, now we want to study the function of the DNA, how the information in the DNA give instructions to make a protein, to build a protein, and how the protein, we said most of the functions are done in the sun by the protein. The DNA just gives the information. DNA gives the information for what? To make a protein. Now we want to study how the protein is built inside the cell. The first thing I want to say here, some of information in the DNA is copied to separate molecule called RNA. You know, in RNA it's also what? A nucleotide. So what is RNA and what is DNA? What's the difference between DNA and RNA? The first thing you have to know, the DNA, which is inside the nucleus, it won't leave the nucleus. It carries all the information. For sure to keep this DNA inside the nucleus and to keep this information from using up, so it will stay where? Inside the nucleus. Imagine with me now, you have, this is the cell. Let's say this is a cell. Let's use different color to see the colors. Imagine you have a cell. This is a cell, and you know the cell, it has inside it what? It has inside it a nucleus, and this is the nuclear membrane. Okay, what do we have inside the nucleus? What do we have inside the nucleus? Inside the nucleus, which is the genetic material, which is DNA. Okay, with this one here is DNA. And we know, we as a human beings, we have what? We have 46 chromosomes, and each chromosome, they are found in pairs, homologous chromosomes, just to remind you. And these genes and the genes on the chromosome carries the information, and these information are used in the chromosome to make a protein. Now we want to know how the DNA gives the instruction to what? To make the protein. Actually, the first thing that happens, the DNA will copy the information on another new molecule, which is called what? RNA. Yani all the information will be copied. Yani I'll give you example. For example, if you have a cooking book, and this cooking book, you don't want to put it in the kitchen all the time, because it will be it's gonna be used inside the kitchen. So to keep this book, I just copy the information in the book on a separate paper and start to work on this separate paper. The same thing here for the DNA. The DNA, it carries the information, okay, and just copy the information on another molecule. This information that is carrying this other molecule, it is what? The RNA, or ribonucleic acid. What is RNA? Actually, RNA is used to build protein. Now we will understand this one. Still you are confused. To understand how the information from DNA will be copied in the RNA, let's study first what's the difference between RNA and DNA. DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA, ribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, it's double strand. Okay, double strands, double helix, you remember? What about RNA? It's only one strand. Then, what are the components of RNA? RNA, it's a nucleic acid also, so it has a nucleotide. Okay, then what about the component of the RNA? It has a sugar Okay, but this type of sugar in RNA is different from the sugar that are making up the DNA. It has phosphate, okay, sugar and phosphate, they are the backbone, and they have a nitrogen bases, adenine, guanine, and cytosine. But the difference here, for RNA, it doesn't contain thymine. No thymine in the RNA. They have instead what? Uracil. Okay? Again, I want to remind you about the DNA. DNA is double strand. The nucleotides are making the DNA, they are making of sugar, they are making up of sugar, phosphate, and nitrogen bases. Nitrogen bases are four nitrogen bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. What about RNA? RNA, it's ribonucleic acid, which is only one strand. It's made up of sugar, phosphate, and what? And nitrogen bases. The nitrogen bases that are making up the RNA: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil instead of thymine. Okay? So this is for what? For the DNA and RNA. And you have to know the sugar that making up the backbone of the RNA, it's different from the type of sugar that making up the DNA. Also, you have to know about the RNA. There are three types of RNA. Have special roles in making proteins. How many types of RNA? There are three types of RNA. Now we will talk about these three types of RNA. What are these three types of RNA and what is the function of each one of them? But actually you will understand the function of each one of them when we start talking about making the protein. Okay? Now let's continue. Hello. Actually for the DNA there are three types of RNA: messenger RNA, and we have ribosomal RNA, transfer RNA. Let's start here at the beginning. When a cell needs to make a protein, now a cell, it needs to make what? A protein. It makes an RNA copy of a section of a DNA. This is called transcription. What does transcription mean? This is the first process to make a protein actually. We said there are three types first of RNA. Messenger RNA, again. Second one, ribosomal RNA. The third one, which is transfer RNA. Let's start first of making a protein. Imagine now inside the cell, this is the cell, or I'm going to show you another figure. So at the beginning, the DNA is inside the cell, inside the nucleus. It gives the information to make a protein. How it will give the information? It will start to copy the information or the instruction on the DNA in another molecule. This molecule is called what? Is called messenger RNA. How this process happen and how exactly the step by step how to do this process, we will talk about it. But in general first, the DNA copy the information first on the messenger RNA. Here, this is the transcription. This process of making protein is called transcription. Then the RNA will start to form with messenger RNA now with the help of the ribosomal RNA, and with the transfer RNA, they will work together to make translation, to translate this information on messenger RNA to what? To make what? The required protein. This process is translation. So to make a protein in general, now we will discuss all the steps. To make a protein at the beginning, transcription process happen. What is transcription? Copy the information from DNA to another molecule, which is mRNA. mRNA. Okay, messenger RNA. I'll stop here for today because I want to talk about the transcription process and step by step how the transcription process happen. Then this information will be translated. Translation is the next step of the making a protein. Okay, we will talk about it later and the definition of it, and we will talk about them. But what I want you to know from this video, what is the structure of the DNA, the difference between the structure of the DNA, the structure of RNA, and you have the RNA. You have to know the 3 types of RNA. These 3 types of RNA, ribosomal, the types, I'm going to write the types of RNA. The types of RNA. What are these types? Messenger RNA, the first one, which is messenger RNA. The second one, which is, you can say instead mRNA. Okay. The second one, which is ribosomal RNA. Okay, which is rRNA. Okay, and we have here the last one, which is transfer RNA, tRNA, transfer RNA, which is what? tRNA, the same. We will talk about them. Where can you find each of them? What is the function of each one of them in the making a protein? How they will work together at the end to make the protein. This is now in general. If you have any question about what we talked today, you can send me your questions. Thank you for listening.